The distress call came in at 3:17 a.m. A single encrypted message. 5 words, Iranian Commandos. Boarding now, help. Then silence. Somewhere in the Gulf of Oman, masked men with assault rifles were swarming onto the deck of an American-operated oil tanker carrying 19 crew members and 800,000 barrels of crude oil worth $54 million. The ship was the St. Nicholas, renamed after being seized once before, and now Iran was taking it again. But this time, the United States was not going to let it go quietly. Within minutes, Navy SEAL Team 5 got the call, gear up, launch, go. Master Chief Special Warfare Operator Jake Morrison had done this before. 38 boarding operations in 17 years of service. But every single one carried the same knife edge of risk. You are climbing onto a hostile vessel in darkness, waves crashing, wind howling, armed men who might shoot before they see your face. And you have seconds to decide whether to pull your trigger first or risk becoming the next casualty statistic buried in a classified report. Jake checked his rifle one more time, tightened his vest, looked at his team. Nobody spoke. They did not need to. They all knew what failure looked like. 2 of their brothers from SEAL Team 3 had drowned just months earlier boarding an Iranian vessel. Chief Christopher Chambers and Nathan Gage Ingram, pulled under by rough seas and heavy equipment, gone in 47 seconds. Their bodies never recovered. That memory was with every operator climbing into the helicopters now. Do not slip, do not fall, because the ocean does not give second chances. The St. Nicholas had been sailing under a Marshall Islands flag, operated by an American company, carrying oil that Iran claimed was stolen from them. And Iran wanted it back, not through courts, not through diplomacy, through armed seizure at gunpoint in international waters. This was piracy dressed up as justice, and it had been happening for years. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, had turned tanker seizures into a weapon, a tool of retaliation. Every time the United States seized Iranian oil shipments, Iran grabbed a Western vessel in response. Tit for tat. Ship for ship. Except the crews caught in the middle were not soldiers. They were Filipino sailors, Greek engineers, Pakistani deckhands, ordinary workers trying to earn a paycheck who suddenly found themselves hostages in a geopolitical chess game they never signed up for. January 2024. That was when Iran first seized the St. Nicholas. Back then it was called the Suez Rajan. The ship had been caught transporting Iranian oil to the United States. America confiscated the cargo, sold it for $56 million, and Iran swore revenge. So when the renamed tanker sailed through the Gulf of Oman months later, IRGC commandos fast wrote from helicopters onto the deck. 19 crew members were taken hostage. The ship was diverted to Bandar Abbas, Iran's main naval base. And for 2 years, the crew lived in legal limbo. Some were released, others were interrogated. All of them knew one truth. When Iran boards your ship, you do not resist, because resistance gets you killed. But here's the part that should scare everyone. Iran has done this over 20 times in the last 5 years. April 2023, they seized the Advantage Sweet, a Marshall Islands flagged tanker, claimed it collided with an Iranian vessel, held the crew for months. April 2024, they grabbed the Portuguese flagged MSC Ares, accused it of connections to Israel. December 2025, 2 more tankers, Star 1 and Vintage, accused of smuggling fuel, all of them boarded by armed IRGC naval commandos, all of them taken to Iranian ports. And in every single case, the crews became bargaining chips, leverage, human shields in a conflict they had nothing to do with. The United States watched this pattern with growing fury. Every seizure was a challenge. Every hostage situation was a humiliation. And every time Iran got away with it, they became bolder. But on this night, something changed. Because when the St. Nicholas sent that distress call, American forces were close, closer than Iran expected. And the order came down from Central Command. Do not let them take that ship. Board it. Retake it. By force, if necessary. SEAL Team 5 launched from USS Bataan, an amphibious assault ship stationed 40 miles away. 2 MH-60 Seahawk helicopters lifted off, carrying 12 operators. Fast ropes coiled. Night vision goggles activated, weapons hot. The flight time was 9 minutes. That meant the IRGC commandos had a 9-minute head start. Enough time to take control of the bridge, secure the crew, prepare defenses, or worse, rig explosives. Because Iran had done that before too. Threatened to blow up ships rather than lose them, and if they did that now, with 800,000 barrels of crude oil on board, the explosion would be visible from space. The helicopters came in low, 50 feet above the water, rotor wash kicking up spray. Through their night vision, the SEALs could see the tanker ahead. Massive, 800 feet long, the size of 3 football fields. Somewhere on that deck were armed men who had no reason to surrender and every reason to fight. Because if they let American forces retake this ship, Iran would call it a defeat. A failure. And the IRGC does not tolerate failure. So the commandos on board had two choices: fight to the death or die trying to escape. Master Chief Morrison was first on the rope, sliding down toward the deck, his gloved hands burning from friction, his rifle slung tight across his chest. He hit the metal surface hard, rolled, came up scanning for threats. Nothing. The deck was empty. Too empty, that was the problem. Where were the IRGC commandos? Where was the crew? And why was everything so quiet? In boarding operations, silence is dangerous, because silence means ambush. The rest of the team dropped fast. 12 operators spread across the deck in textbook formation. They moved toward the superstructure, the tall tower rising from the middle of the ship where the bridge and crew quarters were located. That is where hostages are held. That is where resistance would come, and that is where mistakes get people killed. Because in close quarters combat on a ship, there are no clean sight lines, no open fields of fire, just narrow corridors, blind corners, hatches that could hide anything. One wrong turn and you are staring down the barrel of an AK-47 with nowhere to go. They reached the first hatch, locked, breaching charge planted, 3 seconds. The explosion blew the door inward. Smoke filled the corridor. The SEALs poured through, flashlights cutting through darkness, voices shouting in Farsi, movement ahead, but not what they expected. It was the crew. Filipino sailors huddled in a storage room, hands zip-tied, terror in their eyes. They had been there for hours. No food, no water. No idea if they were going to live through the night. One of them, a 42-year-old engineer named Carlos Reyes, looked up at Morrison and asked the only question that mattered. "Are you American?" Morrison nodded. Carlos started crying. After 2 years as a hostage once before, he thought it was happening again. But this time, help had come. But where were the IRGC commandos? The SEALs moved deeper into the superstructure, clearing rooms, checking compartments. And then they found the bridge. Door open, equipment smashed, navigation systems destroyed. And sitting in the captain's chair, one Iranian commando. Alone, weapon on the floor, hands raised. He did not fight, he did not run. He just sat there, waiting. Because the rest of his team had already escaped. They had fast-roped back to their helicopters the moment they heard American rotors approaching. They grabbed what intelligence they could, disabled the ship's systems, and vanished into the night, leaving one man behind, the one who was too slow, the one nobody waited for. In the IRGC, if you cannot keep up, you're expendable. The SEAL team secured the ship, freed the crew, called in explosive ordnance disposal to sweep for booby traps, and waited for dawn. When the sun came up, Master Chief Morrison stood on the deck looking at the captured Iranian commando. The man was maybe 25 years old, scared, alone. He kept saying the same thing in broken English. "I have family, please. I have family." Morrison thought about that. This kid probably joined the IRGC because it was the only job available, the only way to feed his family in an economy crushed by sanctions. And now he was going to spend years in an American prison because his commanders left him behind. War is not clean. It is not heroic. It is just people making impossible choices and living with the consequences. But here is what the world needs to understand. This was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern. Iran seizes ships to retaliate for American pressure. America sends special forces to retake them. And somewhere in the middle, ordinary sailors become pawns. Carlos Reyes, the Filipino engineer, had been taken hostage twice. The first time he was held for 11 months. The second time he was freed after 6 hours because SEALs intervened. But he is never going back to sea. He told reporters later that no amount of money is worth living in. Fear that every voyage could end with armed men boarding your ship. That is the human cost nobody talks about. The careers destroyed, the families shattered, the psychological trauma that does not heal. Iran calls these seizures law enforcement. They claim the ships are smuggling, violating sanctions, stealing Iranian resources. And sometimes they are right. Some vessels in the Gulf are part of shadow fleets, illegal networks moving sanctioned oil, but most are not. Most are just commercial shipping trying to navigate one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. 21% of global oil passes through this 21-mile-wide choke point every single day. That is 21 million barrels. If Iran closes the strait, the global economy collapses. Gas prices triple. Supply chains freeze. Countries that depend on Middle Eastern energy face blackouts. That is why the United States keeps warships there permanently. Not to start wars, but to prevent one nation from holding the entire world's energy supply hostage. And here is where it gets terrifying. Iran is getting better at this. Their commandos are more trained, their tactics more sophisticated, and their willingness to escalate is growing. In December 2025, the United States conducted its own tanker seizure operation off the coast of Venezuela. The target was a vessel transporting Iranian oil to fund Hezbollah. U.S. forces fast-roped from helicopters, secured the ship, detained the crew. It was the exact same tactic Iran uses. And Iran noticed. They called it state piracy, hypocrisy, and promised retaliation. That retaliation came 2 weeks later, the St. Nicholas. Again, but Iran is not just seizing ships. They are studying American special operations, learning our patterns, timing their seizures when U.S. forces are far away, using decoys to split our attention, and developing countermeasures. In 2024, 2 Navy SEALs drowned during a boarding operation. Chief Christopher Chambers and Nathan Gage Ingram. They were climbing onto an Iranian dhow, a small wooden vessel carrying smuggled missile parts destined for Houthi rebels in Yemen. The seas were rough, waves 6 feet high, wind gusting at 20 knots. Chambers slipped, fell into the water. Ingram jumped in after him. They were both wearing over 60 pounds of gear, body armor, weapons, ammunition, radios. And they sank, fast. A rescue swimmer went in immediately, but in darkness and rough seas, finding 2 men underwater is nearly impossible. They searched for 10 days, never found the bodies. The investigation later concluded that their deaths were preventable. Better flotation equipment, more buoyancy training, stricter safety protocols. But those recommendations came too late for Chambers and Ingram. Their families buried empty caskets. This is what Americans do not see, the hidden cost of keeping shipping lanes open. The SEALs who drown in darkness. The helicopter pilots who fly missions that could end in fireballs. The intelligence officers tracking Iranian movements knowing that one miscalculation could start a war. None of it makes headlines. None of it gets parades. It just happens, quietly, constantly. In waters where one wrong move means death or international crisis, and the operators keep going back. Because somebody has to. Because if America stops boarding Iranian vessels, Iran will board more American ships. And if America stops escorting tankers, Iran will attack them. That is the calculus. That is the trap. Neither side can back down without looking weak. So both sides keep escalating. And the sailors caught in the middle keep praying they do not become the next hostage story or the next casualty report. The St. Nicholas operation ended quietly. The ship was towed to a neutral port. The crew was flown home. The captured IRGC commando was transferred to a detention facility in an undisclosed location. And Master Chief Morrison and his team returned to USS Bataan, debriefed, rearmed, ready for the next call. Because there will be a next call. There always is. Iran has over 3,000 vessels transiting the Gulf every month. Tankers, cargo ships, fishing boats. Any one of them could become a target. Any one of them could require a rescue operation. And every single time, American Special Operations Forces have to be ready. Ready to fly into hostile territory. Ready to board moving vessels in rough seas. Ready to confront armed commandos who have been trained to die rather than surrender. But here's the part that keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. What happens when this goes wrong? Not slightly wrong, catastrophically wrong. What happens when SEALs board a ship and the IRGC commandos fight back instead of fleeing? When the tanker explodes because someone rigged it with explosives? When American and Iranian forces are shooting at each other on the deck of a ship in international waters and the whole thing escalates into open war? Because that scenario is not hypothetical. It almost happened in 1988 during Operation Praying Mantis. The United States destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms after the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts hit a mine. Iran retaliated by attacking American warships. The USS Wainwright and Iranian patrol boat Joshin exchanged missile fire. The Iranians lost. Their frigate Sahan was sunk. Sabalan was crippled. 56 Iranian sailors died, and the entire Persian Gulf nearly became a war zone. That was 1988, the Cold War era. Both sides had restraint. Today, restraint is harder. Iran has more weapons, more proxies, more ways to retaliate, and the United States has less patience. President Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, reimposed sanctions, killed IRGC General Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike. Iran responded with ballistic missile attacks on U.S. bases, then attacked Saudi oil facilities, then seized tankers, then armed Houthi rebels who are now attacking ships in the Red Sea. Every action creates a reaction. Every escalation demands a counter-escalation. And somewhere in that spiral, somebody is going to miscalculate. An Iranian commander will shoot when he should have held fire. An American SEAL will pull a trigger in a split-second decision that starts something nobody can stop. A tanker will explode, a helicopter will crash, and suddenly, 2 nations that do not want war will be in one anyway. Because war rarely starts with declarations. It starts with accidents that nobody can walk back. The crew of the St. Nicholas did not care about geopolitics, they just wanted to go home. Carlos Reyes, the Filipino engineer, finally made it back to Manila 3 days after being rescued. His wife and 2 daughters met him at the airport. They hugged for 5 minutes. Nobody spoke. What do you say to someone who has been taken hostage twice? What words make that okay? Carlos told reporters later that he was done with commercial shipping. He was going to find work on land, something safe, something that did not involve armed men boarding in the middle of the night. But thousands of other sailors are still out there. Filipinos, Indians, Pakistanis, Indonesians. They crew the tankers that keep the world running. And every time they sail through the Persian Gulf, they know that today could be the day Iran decides to board their ship. That today could be the day they become hostages, or casualties, or forgotten names in a news cycle that moves too fast to care. Master Chief Morrison is still out there too, still flying missions, still boarding hostile vessels, still making split-second decisions that determine whether people live or die. He does not talk about it much. Most SEALs do not. They just do the job, go home, try to sleep, fail, go back to work. Repeat. The Navy gives them medals, thanks them for their service, promotes them through the ranks, but medals do not bring back Chambers and Ingram. Medals do not erase the memory of climbing onto a ship knowing that one slip means drowning in darkness, while your team searches for a body they will never find. That is the reality of special operations, not the Hollywood version. The real version, where courage looks like doing something terrifying over and over again because nobody else can. Because if SEALs do not board those ships, Iran wins by default. If special forces do not risk their lives, innocent sailors lose theirs. So they keep going. Into the darkness, into the danger, into situations where the only guarantee is that something could go horribly wrong at any second. The St. Nicholas is back at sea now, different crew, same route, carrying oil through the same waters where it was seized twice. Because commerce does not stop. The global economy does not pause for geopolitics. Ships have to keep sailing, even through war zones, even past Iranian fast attack boats, even knowing that IRGC commandos could board at any moment. And American forces will keep escorting them. SEALs will keep launching. Helicopters will keep flying. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is letting Iran control the Strait of Hormuz, letting them seize ships without consequence, letting them turn international waters into their personal hunting ground. And that is a line the United States will not cross, even if it means risking war, even if it means losing operators like Chambers and Ingram, even if it means one day the whole situation explodes into something that cannot be contained. Iran knows this. They know America will respond. They know SEALs will come, and they keep seizing ships anyway. Because for Iran, this is not just about oil or money or sanctions. It is about pride, about proving they cannot be bullied, about showing the world that they can hit back even when facing the most powerful military on earth. And in that calculation, tanker crews are expendable. International law is optional. And escalation is acceptable. Because Iran believes the United States will never go to full-scale war over a seized tanker. They believe American political will is too fragile. That public opinion would turn against another Middle East conflict. That economic pressure would force restraint. And so far, they have been right. America responds with special operations, surgical strikes, targeted actions that do not make headlines and do not start wars. But what happens when that is not enough? When Iran seizes a ship and the SEALs cannot retake it? When the crew is executed instead of held hostage? When an American helicopter is shot down during a boarding operation and Iran celebrates the kill? Those scenarios keep military planners running simulations, tabletop exercises, war games, trying to find responses that are strong enough to deter Iran, but limited enough to avoid triggering wider war. The answer is never clean. It is always a balance, always a gamble, always a hope that this time, like last time, both sides will pull back before the point of no return. But hope is not strategy, and luck runs out, eventually, inevitably. The question is not whether another tanker will be seized. The question is what happens when the next seizure goes differently, when the IRGC commandos do not flee, when the crew fights back, when American SEALs and Iranian special forces are shooting at each other on a ship filled with explosive fuel, when somebody detonates something they should not, and when the video of burning sailors and sinking ships goes viral before anyone can spin the narrative. That is the future hanging over the Persian Gulf. Not the future anyone wants, but the future that gets closer every time Iran boards another ship, every time American forces respond, every time sailors like Carlos Reyes are taken hostage and operators like Morrison risk their lives to free them. This is not a story about heroes and villains. It is a story about systems colliding, about nations trapped in escalation cycles they cannot escape, about ordinary people, sailors and SEALs and commandos who become casualties of geopolitics they did not choose. And it is a story without an ending. Because as long as oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, as long as Iran wants leverage and America wants control, the pattern will repeat. Ships will be seized. Forces will respond. People will die. And the world will keep spinning, barely noticing, until the day something breaks that cannot be fixed. Until the miscalculation happens. Until the tanker explodes. Until the war that nobody wanted becomes the war nobody can stop. At 3:17 a.m., a distress call went out. Iranian commandos boarding. Help. And help came. This time. But next time? Next time might be different. Next time the SEALs might arrive too late. Next time the Commandos might stand and fight. Next time the ship might not be saved. And when that happens, when the system finally fails, the world will wake up to discover that the crisis everyone ignored had been building all along. In dark waters, with armed men, with ordinary sailors, with special operations forces who knew the risks and went anyway. Because somebody had to. Because if they did not, who would? The answer is nobody. And nobody is not an option when global energy security hangs in the balance. So the missions continue. The boardings continue. The escalations continue. And somewhere out there, right now, another tanker is sailing through dangerous waters. Another crew is hoping they make it through safely. And another SEAL team is gearing up, just in case. Because the call always comes. And when it does, they go. Into the night, into the unknown. Into situations where courage is not enough, but it is all they have. That is the silent war in the Persian Gulf. The one nobody talks about. The one that could explode at any moment. The one where American commandos and Iranian commandos are playing a game of escalation chicken. And the losers are always the same. The sailors who never asked to be part of this, the operators who never come home, and the families who bury empty caskets, while the tankers keep sailing, and the oil keeps flowing, and the cycle keeps spinning, until the day it does not. The Pentagon knows what that day looks like. They have classified reports detailing every possible escalation scenario. What happens if Iran sinks an American helicopter during a boarding operation? The answer involves cruise missile strikes on IRGC naval bases. What happens if American SEALs are captured and paraded on Iranian television? The answer involves rescue operations that could cost dozens of lives. What happens if a tanker is deliberately destroyed with its entire crew aboard? The answer involves military actions that cross lines nobody wants to cross. These are not plans anyone hopes to execute. They are nightmares kept in safes, updated quarterly, briefed to commanders who pray they never have to implement them. Because once those plans activate, once American forces start targeting Iranian infrastructure on Iranian soil, the proxies activate too. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthi, rebels in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq, they all have orders, pre-positioned weapons, targets already selected, American bases, Israeli cities, Saudi oil facilities. The entire region could ignite in 48 hours, and stopping it would be nearly impossible. Because proxy wars do not have clean endings. They metastasize, they spread. They pull in actors who were never involved in the original dispute, but suddenly have reasons to join. Turkey, Russia, China. Every major power has interests in the Middle East. Every major power would be forced to choose sides. And choosing sides in a regional war means the risk of that war going global. Is one seized tanker worth that risk? Is one rescued crew worth triggering World War III? The question sounds absurd. But it is the question commanders face every single time they authorize a boarding operation. Because any operation could be the one that goes wrong. Any mission could be the spark. And by the time you know it was the wrong call, it is too late to take it back. So they calculate, they assess, they weigh the intelligence, and they send the SEALs anyway. Because not responding is also a choice, and that choice has its own consequences. If America stops rescuing hostages, Iran takes more. If America stops boarding Iranian vessels, Iran becomes bolder. If America blinks, adversaries worldwide notice, and suddenly Taiwan looks more vulnerable, Ukraine gets less support, allies start doubting whether American security guarantees mean anything. That is the trap. Every decision carries risk. Every choice invites danger. And the only certainty is that doing nothing is often the worst option of all. So the pattern continues. Iran seizes ships. America responds. Crews are rescued or released. Tensions spike, then cool. And everyone pretends the system is stable, but it is not stable. It is a house of cards held together by luck and the professionalism of operators, like Master Chief Morrison, who make the right calls under impossible pressure. One day, that luck will run out. One day, the call will be wrong. And on that day, the world will discover that the Persian Gulf was never as calm as it appeared. That beneath the surface, a war was already being fought. By commandos and sailors, by nations and proxies, by people whose names will never be remembered, but whose actions determined whether peace held or shattered. And when it shatters, when the containment fails, when the escalation becomes uncontrollable, historians will look back and ask why nobody stopped it, why nobody saw it coming, why the warnings were ignored. The answer will be simple. Everyone saw it coming. Everyone knew the risks, but nobody knew how to stop it without accepting costs they were not willing to pay. So they gambled. They hoped. They trusted that one more boarding operation would not be the one that changed everything. Until it was.